My name is Alex Life, and in this video we're gonna talk about the most important Polyglot API on GraalVM. This is the API that you need to use when you want to embed components in different languages in your Java applications. Let's take a look. Here I have my simple Java application. It consists of the main class, we have the main method, and immediately we have the first usage of the GraalVM API. The most important class here is the context. Context represents your application embedded in the main Java application. So the context will be able to evaluate different languages and it will be instantiated and it will encapsulate that language execution, holding its global state and so on. You can think of a context as your application. The context API has quite a bit of configuration methods, for example, to restrict what the application can be doing or not. So for example, you can allow it to create processes and threads. You can allow it to have access to Java classes, have access to IO, and so on. For the purposes of the demo, we're going to allow all access and we're going to build this context in a straightforward way. Now, to use it, we will need to evaluate snippets of code in this context. So we're going to go polyglot and we're going to do eval, and we're going to say that we're going to use JavaScript because everyone loves JavaScript. And then we can pass the source object. There are multiple ways to instantiate the source object. The simplest one is, of course, the string, but there are also the file source and so on. So you can actually organize your code in neat files on the file system and then feed them as you would normally do without putting all the code inside strings. However, for the purposes of the current demo, this is not necessary. So we're gonna say that our source is a statement, as an expression. So we put it in parentheses and let's define a function. So function double, it takes X, let's say double me, to not have any keyword issues, and we'll return X plus X. Right, so this is a very simple statement. It defines a JavaScript function and the function does just nothing much. What we can do now, we're going to say, we're going to assign that to a value. So the evaluation of the script will return us a value, and value is the most important class. The instances of value represent objects in the polyglot context. So for example, I can convert them to a number of implicit, to number of Java classes using the implicit conversions. So for the primitive times and for the, say, dates and for some other strings, time zones, you have those conversions. It also represents, since it could be an object in a polyglot context, it also can have certain properties. For example, it could have array elements which you can access by the index, or members that you can access by identifier, for example, properties or methods. It also can be executable. It can be executed or instantiated. So value is indeed this object that any object within the context can be represented by a value. And the value API allows you to interact with that object fairly easily. So for example, here, what we can do, we can say double me, and we can say execute, since we know we define the function. So we don't need to check whether this is actually a function or not, but we can execute and say, we say hello world, and we can run this. We can run this application. Quite easy, right? So what we need to do is, let's assign this to value, right? And then let's print it out. Click run. We are running on GraalVM, so the polyglot classes are there, and we can see that the output is indeed hello world, hello world. So this is how you can call methods in other languages. So you evaluate your sources inside the polyglot context, and then you can just use and call those functions and methods normally. And you can see that I just was passing the Java object here without any conversion. and the GraalVM API takes care of that. You can also pass more complex objects there. So for example, if we evaluate, let's say we evaluate different, and we just return X, say to string, just to say the method, and we'll call, here we say, what do we say? We have a sample class, which is a person class that has name and index and defines a meaningful toString method. So what I can do now, I will construct the person, new person, and we'll assign that to value, right? And then we do person set name equals Oleg, and person index is of course 42. And we execute that with the person class, right? And we will see what will be the output of this. So we're actually passing a Java object to our context, to the function that was defined in JavaScript. And you can see that the output is a normal Java string. Another way to pass values to the context would be the bindings. So we can have Polyglot get bindings for the language. And this is the bindings for our JavaScript context. So we can have JavaScript put member, and we say Oleg, and we put this person, right? And now we can have in the function, for example, if we have Oleg to string, and we don't have any parameters there, so we can just execute this double me function, and we don't need any parameters, and we have that printed out. Execute. We should have now the same result of Oleg 42. Let's put it 43, just so we know that stuff changed. We don't need hello world. We don't need hello world. Let's run this again. It executes and it prints. So now our JavaScript has access to the person under the name Oleg that we are currently having him. I think that's it. So on the values you can have, you can access the objects, so that we can have execute as string, and it will come back as a string if we need to, or for example the double me can be as and we can have the function class. We can have the function class definition there and convert it to the Java util function. So those are the two most important APIs for the polyglot execution that you need to know. Context encapsulates the program state and the execution, and value means the polyglot object. And you can see how you can get values from the guest language, as we call it, from the languages that you embed in your Java applications. You get the value API back, and you also can see how you can pass values to that, either by just calling functions directly, passing the objects, or putting them into the bindings. If you would like to learn more, there is certainly documentation available on the graalvm.org website, so you can just go there and check it out. And until then, see you next time.